A Scrutinization of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton. In this paper presentation, I will attempt to use a decolonial lens to deconstruct and decentralize Eurocentric narratives in a so-called progressive musical. Hamilton, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, is a rap/hip-hop Broadway musical that debuted in 2015 and has had amazing reception since its release. It was nominated for 16 Tony Awards, winning 11 of them. Personally, I absolutely love Hamilton. It's probably my favorite work of art ever created, and I have memorized every lyric in the entire 2-hour and 55-minute musical. However, the story that it tells is also incredibly problematic, and essentially acts as an inaccurate piece of propaganda, glorifying colonizers and oppressors alike. To many, Hamilton is seen as a progressive work of art. There's no shortage of media praising it for its originality, diversity, female empowerment, and the general wokeness of the play. After all, the original Broadway musical's cast, and the many showings after that, features a full cast of BIPOC immigrants playing essentially every single named character in the play. Hamilton is an extremely accessible tool for educating worldwide audiences who would never otherwise be exposed to this type of material. These lessons include reconciliation, racial healing, and radical redistributions of American identity. Hamilton is a story about how a pro-immigrant, anti-slavery, oppressed minority overcame systemic oppressions and fought for his freedom. In the words of the musical itself, a story of how a bastard orphan, son of a whore, grew up to be a hero and a scholar. The reality is that the history behind Hamilton's rise to success was a lot uglier than that. In 2015, Lin-Manuel Miranda described Hamilton as
the story of America then told by America now.
Viewing Hamilton through a decolonial lens, I argue that this work of art not only subscribes to Eurocentric standards, it's also incredibly damaging and almost insulting to marginalized identities in both past and present America. The majority of the American population would never even bat an eye at American history. Yet this musical, which is probably the only work of literature regarding American history they would ever consume, glorifies colonizers, enslavers, and oppressors, and even frames them as the protagonists, while simultaneously miseducating the population regarding the history of America and downplaying the horribly violent oppressive tools used by colonial powers. According to Fanon, the historic oppression and stripping of American and Native identities from the marginalized populations, as well as the violent imposing of Eurocentric ideologies, continue to manifest and perpetuate mental and identitarian issues for those same populations in the contemporary day. Colonial powers used many of these mental violences to dehumanize and deculture natives, creating systems of oppression that perpetuate the stripping of personal autonomy to those affected over many, many generations. By creating a near all-minority cast to perform a musical embodying African hip-hop, Lin-Manuel Miranda has attempted to overturn the Euro-dominated stage, while simultaneously allowing the cast to participate in and share drama therapy, to turn systemic tables, and to allow the empowerment of embodying powerful identities in a society's history. Now, the issue is that from 2018 to 2019, Broadway attendees were reported to be 75% Caucasian. In addition, 81% of them had a college degree, 65% of them were tourists, and the average theatergoer had a median household income of $261,000. In fact, the average price of a Hamilton ticket was $1,200 in May of 2016. Hamilton, as a tool for racial healing, is not accessible to those who need it the most. In addition, even with good intentions, once a piece of art is released, Lin-Manuel Miranda doesn't really have a say in how it's going to be interpreted. Ultimately, the musical still very much subscribes to Eurocentric capitalist systems as a huge money-making blockbuster. Césaire's theory of thingification revolves around the commodification of colonized populations. Essentially, thingification in colonial times was the process of transforming oppressed populations into resources to solely satiate the needs of the colonizer. This could be trade, financial gain, labor, simple abuse of power, and so forth. Obviously, when Césaire wrote his piece from Discourse on Colonialism, he had colonial powers in mind, not some Broadway musical. However, I argue that a continued exploitation of these populations since colonial times still fits Césaire's definition of thingification, just in the contemporary day. Hamilton has not only commodified the story of the colonizer through both the storylines and character, it has literally commodified the entire American Revolution. In the past, colonizers would set up systems to perpetually exploit marginalized populations, obviously at the cost of their livelihood, culture, and happiness. Hamilton continues to subscribe to these same exploitations by twisting historic facts, warping perspectives, and glorifying violent colonizers as heroes to fit this accessible narrative. In conclusion, Hamilton is a Broadway musical that, despite its progressive mission, unfortunately continues to subscribe to Eurocentric systems, heroizes colonizers, and downplays the use of violence in the colonial era. This twisting of historical facts can prevent the reconciliation and rebuilding of autonomy of marginalized populations in the contemporary day. Now, I'm not saying that Lin-Manuel Miranda is a villain for having done this. The twisting of these historical narratives has made for an amazing piece of art, but ultimately we would have to be deliberately ignorant to ignore the socio-cultural impacts that the play has manifested in the rewriting of history. Thank you everyone for watching. This has been my final paper presentation for GEOG 346A. All sources will be shown on the next slide, as well as in the bottom right-hand corner of all the scenes containing material that I didn't create. Cheers!